Welcome back, Wolfpack Brolis here to a Facts, Stats, Trivia, and a Top 10 for the electric typing. So the electric typing is going to be really good when we look at its defensive breakdown. That we have one weakness. That's ground, that's it. Some of these Pokemon even get levitate. That's pretty absurd. Also, we get resistance to flying, steel, and electric. So 3 resistances, 1 weakness. That's an amazing trade right there. Offensively though, it's kind of the opposite, that we only have 2 weaknesses, but then we are resisted by quite a bit, and we are immune by ground. Pretty much a hard counter to electric, and that just makes a lot of sense. We're breaking down these statistics. Electric typing has the second least hit points and the second least attack. At the same time, we don't have much on our defense, but the special attack, special defense, and speed is pretty solid. We do have 5th place for the average special attack of all fully evolved electric type Pokemon, which is pretty good, and 3rd place for the speed. Kind of interesting to see how low the speed ratings are compared to the other stats. That having a 90 base stat average makes you 3rd place for speed, but only 5th place for special attack. Pretty interesting, but at the end of the day, we are 13th place for our base stat total average, which means not a lot of power, but there are quite a few single stage and low base stat electric type Pokemon that could bring the average down, and it isn't too much else from there. As far as individual Pokemon trivia goes, we have Mega Ampharos being the most fabulous Pokemon in the game, and having the single highest base stat of any electric type Pokemon with 165 special attack. Also, Electrode is the 10th fastest Pokemon, and the fastest electric type Pokemon with 140 base speed, so we got a lot of really cool stat breakdowns from there. Other trivia is that there are only 5 legendary electric type Pokemon, including both Thunderous forms, and only 6.5% of all Pokemon are going to be the electric typing, making it the 11th most common typing, and the electric typing can't be paralyzed. As for some more interesting electric type trivia, we have it to where all electric type moves introduced in Generation 1 began with the word Thunder. Thunderbolt, Thundershock, Thunderwave, you know, the list goes on like that. That's pretty crazy. Also, the electric type has been represented in every region except for Johto. However, every main series Pokemon game has an electric type gym involved, because in Gold and Silver, we go back to Kanto, and then we have Lieutenant Surge. So that's pretty interesting. And the last little bit of trivia is going to be that there are 3 exclusive abilities that only electric type Pokemon can have: Static, Motor Drive, and Volt Absorb. And Motor Drive and Volt Absorb just give a full electric immunity as well, so a lot of really cool, interesting trivia. As for electric type attack coverage, it's going to be alright. We do have a lot of those immunities with ground type Pokemon, and we don't have a crazy amount of super effective hits, but all we have to do is pair it up with ice, and that changes dramatically. The electric and ice is going to give us very, very good coverage, only having 5 resistances and 1 immunity, that being Shedinja, and then a really solid coverage throughout. Alright, now it's time to hop into Pokemon Showdown. We have to start out with Pikachu at number 10. The company mascot is also a very powerful Pokemon that does have a couple of really interesting options, and now after the Pikachu Cup, we did receive the special Pikachu, so it's even a fear Pokemon. So with Endeavor on Pikachu, you can do some really scary things. So you use Endeavor, and then since you get like a level 10 Pikachu, go into Quick Attack from there, and that's a Focus Sash, so Focus Sash, Quick Endeavor, Indata, Pikachu, so it's a Feep instead. And then we also have some really good options in double battles and potentially singles as well, that as long as we're outspeeding with our 90 speed, we get access to very powerful moves like Volt Tackle and even Knockoff. That Pikachu does get Knockoff as a tutor, so it does some pretty crazy things. Or if you want it to be a direct support Pokemon, has Fake Out, has Encore, has all sorts of really interesting things that can throw your opponent off guard. Then you go Fake Out into an Encore and you start knocking off items in double battle. Well, the opponent's going to have a pretty hard time dealing with that, and it can even just throw out some really crazy things like Electro Web. So then you get the speed support down. Now Pikachu is just being a really difficult Pokemon to deal with. Also, you give it a Light Ball, and that changes its stats around, so if you're getting the outspeeds, it can also pump out a serious amount of damage. So I mean, Pikachu, yeah, rightfully deserves to be in the top 10, and why not? It's an awesome mascot. So, alright, we're going to go into the next one. That's going to be number 9, Electivire. Electivire, it's number 9 on the list because while it is a very powerful Pokemon, it's limited in being a physical electric type Pokemon. The best move that's going to get access to isn't Volt Tackle. No, Volt Tackle is just for Pikachu. What physical electric type Pokemon get instead is going to be Wild Charge. Now, Wild Charge is less base power, and it also has 1/4 recoil. So its highest physical option that gives stab is only going to be 90 base power and deal damage to itself. That's not that great. However, Electivire does get Earthquake as an Electric-type Pokemon, so it can put out a serious amount of pain with that as a physical Electric-type attacker as well, and then it does get Elemental coverage from the punches. So you can run something like Ice Punch. You can also run any kind of other moves. It does get Cross Chop, so if you want to play around with accuracy, you can. And mostly, it's going to have a crazy amount of power, but not quite enough. 123 attack, even with an Adamant Nature, if we're not expecting to outspeed too much, isn't going to find those neutral KOs with the Wild Charge, just because it isn't enough base power. At the same time, with Motor Drive, if we switch it on an Electric-type move, we do gain enough speed for it to really matter, and you can run Vital Spirit if you want to counter out some kind of sleep tactics. So it does have some pretty good options. You can trade effectively, so it's a great coverage Pokemon, not just a great base power one-hit KO Pokemon. That's why it's number 9 on the list. Alright, number 8 is going to be Mega Ampharos. So we see Ampharos on the list again, and that's just because it's too magnificent to not have. So it's a 165 base special attack Pokemon, and since you're not worrying about the speed, slap a Modest Nature on it, you can run Bulk, and now it becomes a pretty difficult Pokemon to deal with. The problem is it did get a bit of a nerf, with the introduction of fairies kind of limiting the power of dragons a bit, and Ampharos not really benefiting from the dragon typing at all. Like, it just gets a stab Dragon Pulse. While that is cool, you do add 3 weaknesses to your 1 weakness electric typing, so it does become a bit more vulnerable while becoming more powerful. This can be worked around though, because Ampharos does have access to a move like Charge. Charge is going to boost your special defense. You also have Cotton Guard, which drastically raises your defense 3 stages. That's 2.5 times your defense. So it's a very tanky Pokemon, or you just go for outright damage. Run moves like Thunderbolt, Signal Beam, a Hidden Power. You can even have Charge Beam instead of Signal Beam, that way you have a chance of boosting your special attack. Then you run Dragon Pulse under a Trick Room, and now this Ampharos is going to find some serious KO potential, and that's kind of it. So you can run a little bit of an interesting set by like playing around with Charge, Tankiness, and Cotton Guard, or you just go for outright damage in Trick Room. It isn't going to be ultra reliable, but with the right amount of dedication and setup, it can be very rewarding, so it is going to be number 8 on the list. Alright, number 7 is going to be Zapdos, and mostly because Electric-type Pokemon that are special attackers, they don't have insane coverage. That's generally going to be an Electric-type move, and Signal Beam, and that's kind of it. But Zapdos does get access to Ancient Power and Heat Wave. Heat Wave is going to be the big one here because next to Discharge, Zapdos pumps out a serious amount of damage in double battles. Max out the special attack, you can even go with a Modest Nature and then run something like a Tailwind. Now you're supporting for your team, and because you have those legendary base stats, you're able to tank up a hit pretty respectably, set up the Tailwind, outspeed your opponents, throw out the Heat Wave for coverage, Discharge for even more coverage, and Zapdos does have excellent synergy with Ground-type Pokemon. They use Earthquake, Zapdos isn't affected. Zapdos uses Discharge, the Ground-type Pokemon isn't affected, and it's just an overwhelming amount of support and damage coming from the Zapdos, so it is something to consider. Because of its power in double battles, I do have to give it the number 7 spot. Alright, number 6 is going to be Galvantula. Galvantula is a Pokemon that I feel should be on number 6 in the list, somewhere around the middle. I don't know how many other people agree, but that's because it's just one of the better setup Pokemon in the game. That it's actually a setup Pokemon with pretty decent kill potential, and that's very surprising. The reason why is Compound Eyes. This Pokemon's moves have their accuracy multiplied by 30%, which means a move like Thunder, going to be very high base power, going to get Stab, but only 70% accuracy. Well, now it has over 90% accuracy, so it's pretty reliable. We also have Bug Buzz, and then the big move here is going to be Sticky Web. Now, I feel Sticky Web is one of the most powerful setup moves in the game because you have a lot of Pokemon this 80 to 100 base speed range that they just need to outspeed the Pokemon and they win. Pokemon like Mega Medicham, you give them a Sticky Web, and now it can pretty much 1 or 2 shot almost anything in the game, and that's really scary to think about. But all you need is that Sticky Web setup, and then you trade really well. So you go Focus Sash. So Focus Sash, say you throw out the Sticky Web, you take a hit, you're going to survive it unless it's like some kind of crazy into priority or you get an extra status effect, but in the most likely scenario, set up Sticky Web and then you throw out a Thunder or a Bug Buzz. That's going to do over half your opponent's health because of your decent special attack, and also you have 108 speed, so you're going to outspeed quite a lot of common leading Pokemon as well, and then if they are neutrally affected by Thunder and they are fairly frail, you can just outspeed them and KO them with Thunder while also getting your Sticky Web set up. So that can be pretty powerful, and then it can snowball the game from there. They're either going to be forced to clear it, or you just bring in a sweeper Pokemon that needed that speed support, and that's how you win. Also, it does get access to Energy Ball, so again, it does break the coverage barrier by having Thunder, Bug Buzz, and Energy Ball. Then it sets up, it can trade effectively. Say your opponent goes for setup, so you use Sticky Web, they use Stealth Rocks. Well, now you two-shot them with Bug Buzz or Thunder, and then you get extra damage on the Pokemon coming in unless it's going to be faster than you. Overall, Galvantula, reliable speed, reliable setup, and just high amounts of damage because of Compound Ice and Thunder, so that's why I put it at number 6 on the list. Alright, number 5 is going to be Magnezone. Now, while not everyone understands how magnets work, we understand that Magnezone does work really well, and all of its abilities are useful depending on what you want it to do. If you want it to come in and trap Steel-type Pokemon, you can slap Hidden Power Fire on it. So Hidden Power Fire means you're going to be able to take out Ferrothorn very effectively and other Steel-type Pokemon with that Magnet Pull, but that's not it. Magnezone also has some very, very good tankiness. At 115 and 90 on defense and special defense with 70 hit points means even a super effective hit, you have a decent chance of surviving. And since we're not worrying about the speed, we just go Modest Nature, huge on that 130 special attack. We also get an item, so most likely you see them run Choice Specs. They come in, they go for their huge damage move, generally blows up the opponent with that Choice Specs, and then they switch out if they don't like it anymore, or they just keep pumping out damage until they go down. If Ferrothorn or that Steel-type Pokemon gives you problems, Magnet Pull is going to be a very solid answer. You also get Flash Cannon. Now your Steel typing and the stab on the Steel typing is going to be ridiculous because now you have a really solid answer to Fairy-type Pokemon. Bring it in, you resist their Fairy-type move, Flash Cannon forces them out, or it's going to be a KO. And that's pretty powerful. Then you have Thunderbolt and even Volt Switch. So Volt Switch does give you the option under choice. You bring it in, you Volt Switch for insane amounts of damage, because even with the low base power of 70, we're already going 130 special attack, stab, and choice specs, and all sorts of damage with that. Then we just come in later, and then we get our finishing Thunderbolt or whatever. But it's not even just about the Magnet Pull. If you want to run Analytic, your options go through the roof now. That with the Analytic, Pokemon's attacks get 30% more power if it is last move in a turn. Again, we're going to be bulky, we're going to be slow. So you endure the hit, and then you just one-shot them back. Or we have Sturdy, that just in case you are worried about getting KO'd by some kind of super effective hit, depending on it, you know, it can be very tough to play around the Sturdy. That Magnezone is almost always going to get a kill with Spec Sturdy. That, you know, you bring in as a revenge Pokemon, you know that you're going to be able to absorb the hit, and then with all this coverage, you probably have enough damage to respond to them back, and since you're running Sturdy, it does give you some speed options so you can outspeed other tankier Pokemon, which could result in 2-hit KOs or some kind of conversion from there. Magnezone, it's really hard to predict, even though it's going to kind of run the same moveset, but if it just overwhelms you with power, there's nothing you can do about it, so it's going to be number 5 on the list. Alright, number 4 is going to be Manectric, and it's mostly going to be Mega Manectric. That's because it does get access to Flamethrower. So you don't have to worry about rolling for a hidden power or anything and trying to play hours and hours and days of the game just to get the right move. No, you already got Flamethrower. That's great. You also do have access to a very powerful Thunderbolt, you get Volt Switch, and then that's where you can like hold it onto a Hidden Power Ice if you want to play the Hidden Power game. But overall, this coverage is going to be excellent. We already talked about earlier how Ice and Electric is very powerful, then you add Flamethrower on top of that, Volt Switch gives you options, and then a 135 base speed. Pretty much whenever I'm trying to decide on when a Pokemon needs to be considered fast, I think 135, around 130 is the excellent threshold. Once you break that 405 speed, you're in a very comfortable position because you're outspeeding, what, all but 15 Pokemon in the game or something like that? And then the only things that stop you are speed setups and Scarf, and then you can play around that. Also, with the Mega Evolution, you do gain a bit in your defensive tankiness, so you can survive a hit, throw out a crazy hit. Now you have 135 special attack. Generally want to run Timid Nature. That's where we just overwhelm the power. We outspeed, endure the hit, outspeed, KO, stack damage on top of it. If we're hitting super effective hits, then it really doesn't matter. Also, Manectric gets the Intimidate ability, so you will see it as a lead or in doubles. Okay, that's a physical Pokemon. Mega Evolve into damage, reduce their damage, boom. It's pretty much just win-win, and it can be a very hard Pokemon to deal with. That it Volt Switches out, it comes back in. Oh, that's another Intimidate stack. Or it can choose to not Mega Evolve and have the Lightning Rod ability for support. Yeah, Mega Manectric is a really fast and powerful Pokemon. You do see it from time to time, and if it catches you off guard with the speed, you might lose a Pokemon or two to it, and that's just because it's that good. So now we are going into some serious stuff right here. Number 3, everyone knew it was going to be on the list at some point, and I gotta say Pachirisu. Now, why top 3? Top 3 is a pretty big statement. Top 5 is a pretty big statement. I'm pretty sure no one is going to doubt after what Sejun Park did with Pachirisu that it's a top 10 Pokemon, But what we saw here is, you don't see the craziest stats, yet at the same time, it's so good. Volt Absorb gives you options to heal it if you want to run Discharge, or if you want to use it to just kind of absorb electric-type moves against the opponent that they might not be expecting. You're at their Discharge potential, you can switch it in, you can play all sorts of little games with Pachirisu, but it's mostly going to be on the move Follow Me. That it's an excellent Follow Me Pokemon, and it's just something that people don't expect. That really what makes it shine is the unsuspecting power of Super Fang. That Super Fang is going to do half of their current hit points, which means little old Pachirisu, when it's not following me, it's just going to use Super Fang and take out half of any Pokemon's health, which means the other Pokemon attacking is just going to be able to clean up incredible amounts of damage really quickly. Also, you do get access to Nuzzle. Nuzzle means that if they have some kind of setup, like you get taunted as Pachirisu, you can still paralyze your opponents. So as a support Pokemon, you do keep your options. Then you paralyze them, you break Sash, you do a little bit of damage, and that does give you options, and then you run like Protect or something. But in double battles, this Pokemon caught people off guard because at the same time, you want to focus it, and then you don't want to, but it Follow Me, so you have to focus it anyway. Citrus Berry, it's like you have to kill it more than you need to, and then the other Pokemon just goes down. So you use Follow Me, they get their setup, you Super Fang, and then it snowballs so much advantage. But pretty much the reason why I want to put it in the top 3 is just the surprise. That no one thought Pachirisu would ever be a competitively viable Pokemon, and yet it won Worlds. And it wasn't just a Pokemon slapped on the team to laugh about winning Worlds. No, this Pokemon had an impact in every game it showed up in. It also just makes a stand, that it shows that if you understand the intricacies of almost any Pokemon, the ins and outs, how to support it, that the message that it represents is worthy of being a top message. If anything, that it is a very powerful Pokemon. It shows almost any Pokemon can be a very powerful Pokemon if you understand it enough and then you support it just right. So the message that it sends, the power that it shows, and also just its effectiveness makes the top 3 on the list. Alright, number 2 is going to be Thundurus. Now, both Thundurus Therian and Thundurus are very powerful Pokemon. Now with Thundurus Therian, you do have a very high amount of special attack, and then you can really play around that. And Thundurus is going to have the Prankster ability, which is absolutely dumb to have to deal with. In double battles, it's going to work as a very good taunt Pokemon that has taunt, that you can also go with something like Thunder Wave, that you can also convert into very high amounts of damage because 111 base speed. Cool, you're outspeeding a lot of Pokemon. 125 special attack. Oh, now you're also doing a lot of damage while providing that taunt, while providing Thunder Wave, while also just going for whatever else you feel like, that you can slap on Hidden Power, go for Thunderbolt, so it's still a very threatening Thunderbolt, and then you just run out the coverage however you feel you need to, and it even has Nasty Plot. So it's like, okay, a Nasty Plot before you even get to attack, and since it is one of the fastest Pokemon, the only thing that can out-taunt it is going to be like a Whimsicott or a speed-tying Tornadus. So your Nasty Plot setup is going to be very guaranteed, and then you have damage options from there. So you can choose to run without taunt, with taunt, Nasty Plot, and 3 attacking moves. It just sets up really quick in singles, and it also shuts down setup. So okay, Pokemon's trying to set up, bring in Thundurus, taunt it, free Nasty Plot, now you snowball damage until your opponent just loses. In double battles, it's kind of the same thing. Might not see the Nasty Plot, but it does have a very powerful Discharge to hit both of your opponents. Flash Cannon for Fairy-type Pokemon. As we talked about, we have Hidden Power moves, we have Grass Knot, we have Focus Blast. It's very hard to pinpoint what this Pokemon's going to do, and most likely it's going to say, oh, you were trying to set up to get an advantage? No, now your Sweeper's paralyzed, your setup Pokemon's taunted, and I'm putting out tons of damage. Have fun with that. You slap a Life Orb on it, and then you just go and destroy everything. So it is going to be very difficult to handle, as a Flying-type Pokemon also removes the Ground-type weakness. So you just have to hit it directly with like rocks or ice, and that's not always going to be the best thing. So it does have a lot of damage, a lot of support, and this goes on and on what Thundurus can do, which is why it is a genie of the balanced meta. And then number 1, the best Electric-type Pokemon, if you haven't seen it by now, you already have to know, it's going to be Rotom Forms, because in a way, it is pretty hard to argue that Rotom isn't the strongest Rotom form, that it has the best typing, that you only have to worry about grass moves, and that's not a common typing at all. Other than that, Hydro Pump is going to output a lot of damage and be pretty solid against a lot of things on the metagame. Does have access to Thunderbolt as well, which means you just kind of do whatever you want on Rotom Wash. It's such a tanky Pokemon, has a lot of supportive capabilities. You can run 2 offensive moves, you can run Volt Switch, Pain Split, Will-O-Wisp. Will-O-Wisp means you can just bulk up a physical hit and then go and throw out the Will-O-Wisp, reduce their power, Pain Split the health back, and then it just doesn't go away, and it's also going to be pretty difficult to knock out. Nothing's more nightmarish than Rotom with Citrus Berry. It's like, oh, Citrus Berry. Now it's a 3-hit KO Pokemon or a 4-hit KO Pokemon. And then you also have Chesto Resto. If you see that, your day's over. You're not going to have fun after that. But at the same time, Rotom Wash isn't the only Rotom form that's usable. You have Rotom Heat. Rotom Heat is going to be usable in metagames where Aegislash is common because you just blast it with an Overheat, where Mawile is common, like Mega Mawile. So it does also counter out pretty well, and even then we do get a little bit of a triangle. That Rotom Wash is so common that even Rotom Mow gets some kind of usage by using Leaf Storm to try and get rid of the Rotom Washes. But overall, Rotom, it just has a lot of versatility that pretty much any team, if you need help with any team, just slap in a Rotom Wash and it's going to get better. That if you need that 6 slot for a Pokemon, singles, doubles, whatever, you just throw it in there, you change out the moveset to what works best with your team, and it's just going to work. That's going to be a reliable switch in, reliable Pokemon to scare off other Pokemon, damage from whatever special move it has, and then it throws out status. It's too good of a Pokemon for utility, too reliable of a Pokemon, and it's one of the few Pokemon out there that almost no matter what, is going to make your team better, and that's why I have to put it number 1 on the list. It's everywhere, it's reliable, it's powerful, and it just does a lot of really scary things and a lot of pretty dumb things as well. So I hope you guys enjoy this video, top 10 electric type Pokemon, facts, stats, trivia, and I hope you all have a nice day. Thank you for watching.